What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this interview on the Jono Show. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm your host, Jonathan, and I am here with a very special guest today, Nikita Ducarroz. Nikita, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Super stoked. I've been, listening to the other episodes, so it's really cool to be on here.
Awesome. Well, for any of you who don't know, Nikita is my cousin, and I have had the wonderful pleasure of really kind of being involved in your life, obviously, for quite some time, but really seeing your process as you've gone through becoming the incredible professional athlete that you are. And so I'm excited to talk about your story, hear your story, and I think even ask some questions that I don't know the answers to in a lot of different senses. As family members, a lot of times we know each other because we get together at family reunions or things like that. But there's a whole other side to everything you've accomplished. So for those of you who don't know, Nikita is a professional BMX rider. She rides for the Swiss national team. She's going to be going to the Olympics whenever the Olympics are. I have no idea about the whole Olympic schedule, and maybe you can tell us about that a little bit. But you are doing that. You're sponsored by Redbull, by Mongoose. You've accomplished so much, and so I'm excited to kind of unpack that, how you got there, and what you're doing now. And so, yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm curious. When you do you introduce yourself as a professional athlete ever? Like, has that sunk in?
I wouldn't, no, I don't think it's really sunk in. I definitely don't say it when I meet people. Sometimes when I have to fill out medical forms and that says what your occupation is, I put professional athlete, but I still kind of feel weird putting that. So yeah, it's kind of weird.
Because I feel like ever since I've known you, this is just something you've done, something you've loved, something you've been excited about. Yeah. At what point were you interested first in BMX? First, why don't you just tell us actually what you do? What is BMX for those of us who have been living under a rock and have no idea what that is?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I explain it to people who I feel like have no idea, because when I say BMX, the first reaction a lot of times is oh, so you ride motorcycles? I'm like, no. So I guess I feel like everyone knows what skateboarding is. So I say it's essentially picture skateboarders, what they do on ramps and bowls and stuff, except on a little bike. And that's basically what we do, just flips and spins and different tricks on ramps made out of wood, made out of dirt, made out of cement. Kind of just a collection of all of that.
So is women's BMX, is that, because that is now an Olympic event, correct? That's fairly recent, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, they told us that it would be in the Olympics probably in 2017. Okay. And then 2020 is when they were supposed to happen. And that would have been the first year that freestyle BMX would have been in. So now obviously it's been pushed a year, and hopefully it does go on as planned. But yeah.
You mentioned freestyle BMX. Is that kind of a different category than are there other styles of BMX?
Yeah. So the other version is racing. And that's been in the Olympics since 2008. So they've had a little more experience with that. There's also flatland, which is almost I guess kind of breakdancing on a bike. It's all done on a flat surface, and it's very acrobatic, and you mostly stay on the ground, but your body is moving around the bike.
Is this something that's super popular in Europe and Asia as well as the US? Because obviously we have X Games here, right?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of Japanese and European flatland riders for sure.
Okay. What about other styles of BMX as well?
I would say those are the three main disciplines. There's smaller, disciplines within that. There's street riding, which is, it's still tricks and stuff like what we're doing, but they're mostly just riding out on the streets and finding natural obstacles. And then there's dirt riding, which is on jumps made out of dirt. So there's kind of a lot of different categories, but as far as I would say freestyle is like dirt, street, park, which is what I do. And then there's flatland, which is, I think, probably still under the freestyle umbrella. And then racing is kind of its whole own separate category of BMX.
Got it. So for scoring or how they're determining who's the best or a winner, that's based on creativity and tricks. Is it kind of like snowboarding or other extreme sports where there's an element of creativity in the style?
Right. It's pretty much like that. It's, obviously it also will depend on the judges. It's a very subjective sport because it is a judged event. Whereas racing, it's like whoever gets across the finish line first. It's very like straightforward. But then, with all the freestyle side of things, it's depends on the judges. But then it's also like using the whole course, the tricks you're doing, the difficulty of the tricks, but also if you make them look good. And creativity, kind of just a big combination of everything.
Got it. So I love this because, bike riding, I feel like is something that so many people did when they were younger. Right.
Yep.
And I certainly know in the neighborhoods that I grew up, kids would have bicycles and try to be doing little tricks or like wheelies. Right. Everyone kind of thinks about that as a trick. Was there a point in your life where you saw kids riding bikes where you thought this was cool, I want to mess around with this? Or did this, your love of bike riding and like the skill that you've gained, did that happen later for you?
I mean, when we were younger, we'd go camping every year with some family friends, and we all like enjoyed jumping our bikes in the woods. We'd make like little jumps, but they were all mountain bikes and stuff. And I never had really seen, other than just jumping straight, I'd never seen tricks and all that. That kind of came from just watching YouTube videos. I don't really know how. I think it just stumbled across them. And then from there, I just wanted to try and copy those tricks. So I got a bike and then, met some other kids that did it in my town and kind of just grew from there.
So as you've grown your the group of people who follow you, because you have quite a large following, do you have people now who watch you and maybe they were like you once were like looking on YouTube to check out tricks and now they're like, oh, Nikita, like I'm checking out her tricks. Do you find that happening?
That's happened a lot. And it's just kind of insane because I still feel like that kid who's just looking at YouTube videos and trying to copy what I'm seeing. So definitely to have like younger kids message me and stuff and just tell me that my writing's motivated them or whatever is pretty unreal.
So I want to get into that, like the process and the journey. And I've seen you at different points, right? And I remember being like, oh, Nikita's getting into bike riding. Like, that's pretty cool. And then, oh, she just got sponsored by, this sponsor. And, oh, they're, giving her free shoes or whatever. I'm like, oh, dang, that's crazy. And then, so there have been these different levels. For you, at what point, was there a point for you that was a tipping point for you that was like, okay, I'm going to do this professionally. Like, this is something that I want to do. At what point was that?
I mean, I would say maybe two years ago, because before that, like you said, it's kind of cool because you saw like all the stages. And I was getting some free parts and shoes and stuff. And
well, walk us through that. Cause like for anyone listening right now who is, maybe someone is going to be watching who is that kid who's excited, who's seen you ride before and is like, what's the progression? Like, how did you go from grabbing your bike down at the skate park with some kids to where you are now? Just kind of walk us through that.
I guess it just started with like, at the time, I think Instagram came out sometime throughout this process. So at the very beginning, it was just YouTube videos. I would just film videos, post them. And, we had Facebook and stuff. So I'd kind of like network with people and maybe other girls that I followed that were in other countries. And just really trying to network with people and meet people through like the internet. And then, Instagram came along. And so I started posting stuff on there and also going to like little local competitions. And then at competitions, that really helped a lot because I was meeting people that were in the industry. There was usually some sort of coverage of those events from like BMX media outlets. So then that was getting posted online on like bigger accounts. And that kind of all just helped me to meet people and form relationships and stuff. And also sometimes I just like reached out to people. I'm sure I've sent a few embarrassing emails back as my 14, 15-year-old self that would make me cringe today.
To sponsors?
To sponsors, yeah. Like sponsor emails. And I just really came down to like getting out there, getting to events, meeting people, and just forming relationships. And then, now with Instagram, it's like everything is at your fingertips to just put yourself out there and promote yourself. And so that's kind of just what I did from the very beginning. And eventually just kind of just built off of that.
Did you ever think like, did you ever have a specific goal that you were trying to reach? Or was it like you were doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing because it was something that you loved and it was like a progression like that? Or did you start with like, I want to be an Olympic athlete?
No, I never thought that the Olympics were a possibility, just simply because the sport wasn't in the Olympics. So I think like now this generation of kids is growing up maybe thinking like, I want to get into this and I want to train for the Olympics. Whereas when I was growing up, I was just like, I just want to ride this bike. And like, I had no idea where it was going to take me. And so the whole Olympic dream really has only been like a 3-year-old dream since like 2017. But yeah, I just I feel like I kind of just evolved with each step and each direction that the sport has gone, and never really had like this end plan. It was just like, I really love doing this. I want to be able to not work a regular job. I want to make this my regular job. How can I do that? And how can I just keep having fun?
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like with that, and that's amazing to me, like you started off on this journey and it wasn't Olympic sport. Do you feel like the women's category in this sport is or has been underrepresented or not represented at all?
I definitely think it's been underrepresented, but like there just wasn't, I think it's like two things. I think there wasn't enough support. So there were women all over the world, but they didn't have sponsors or anything. So they couldn't get out to these events. So when I'd go to an event, it would just be whatever local girls were there. Nobody could come from other countries or even other states to compete. So then, because there were so few of us, there wasn't really like competition. And so then everyone was kind of just doing what they always did. And we didn't really push for anything more. When the Olympics got introduced, the countries stepped in and created like national teams and stuff. And suddenly all these people had funding and the countries were sending, these riders to all the big events. And we go from having 8 riders, which was like a big deal for us in the women's class, to suddenly having like 43.
Wow.
Just in 1 year, like from the year before Olympics got announced to the year after it got announced. And so then now you have 43 girls, you have this like Olympic dream, you have like all the women that have proper support to go train other places and all this stuff. And the progression level just is like going higher and higher and higher. Now everyone's like actually competitive with each other. So that kind of just catapulted all of that.
So now it's like there's almost this pressure because all of the girls who have been out there, they have been practicing. They've been kind of, I don't want to say messing around with it, but they've been kind of doing it in more of an amateur way. Now it's all of a sudden there is this professional stage that they can be on. And so that's not only giving them an opportunity to go and compete at that high level, but maybe even putting pressure on established riders like yourself and others to like increase your tricks. And, because you're seeing people creatively like come in. Is the community that you're in kind of at the top of this group? Is it a very close-knit community because you've all kind of experienced this shift, or has it blown up in a similar way?
No, I think it's still pretty tight knit, because at the end of the day, like the people that are going to the World Cups and stuff is pretty much the same group of people every time. You know, there's definitely like different groups that kind of come together, but yeah, it's just the same people pretty much traveling. And every so often you'll get some new people that will just like pop out of nowhere, and they'll get put on the national team, and then they're added into the mix. So
it sounds like, I, as I mentioned in the beginning, like you're on the Swiss national team. So I want to get into all that, because that's really interesting. But you said with the advent of the Olympics now, different countries are fielding teams in this new category, correct? So it's pretty international then at this level. I mean, are you doing a lot of traveling?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the past year, like there was way less traveling. We had 0 contests last year.
Wow.
But still,
I'm curious just about that. Like, how have you stayed competitive? And I've really wondered this about athletes in general. Like, how do you?
It's interesting because, like, on one hand, it's been really great, because normally we're traveling so much that when we get home, all we want to do is like rest and chill, because we know like in a week we have to pack up again and go somewhere. And so it's almost like you're just trying to stay healthy for competitions, and you're just trying to make sure the tricks that you already know how to do are good and consistent so that you can do them at the contest. It doesn't leave a lot of room for like learning new tricks and stuff like that. So having all this time at home, we've had now this whole year to literally just do that, just learn tricks, ride every single day, have this like consistency in this routine that we've never had before. Then on the other hand, though, everyone's out of practice with actually competing. Like competing itself is its own thing that you have to practice for. And so it's going to be very strange when we have to get back to that. And I'm very curious to see like what's going to happen. And also because other than like maybe seeing Instagram clips or just riding with the people that you do ride with, we've gone a whole year without seeing what our competitors are doing. Normally at competitions, you see what they're doing because they're going to do it for the competition. Now we've gone this whole year and it's like, you don't know what they're not posting on Instagram. So who knows what everyone has learned over this past year. And we're going to come to this one contest, be back at this contest, and it's going to just be a huge surprise for everyone.
So how do you stay competitive then? Like as a competitor at the highest level, how are you kind of pushing yourself, or how do you, because you said you're riding every single day. So are you riding in a facility? Are you, dirt jumps? Where are we at here with that?
Yeah. So I moved here to North Carolina at the beginning of last year for this indoor facility. And I'm with like maybe 7 other riders, a couple of Team USA riders. We have a Venezuelan rider, a Croatian rider, and then a couple other like international teams come in and out as well. Like right now we have the British cycling team here.
Okay, cool.
And I don't know, as far as staying competitive, like for me, I've always been my worst enemy. Mm-hmm. So I've just kind of been focusing on like learning the tricks that I think I can learn, and just trying to do what I think I need to do to put down a good run. Obviously, like if I see some clips that might from other girls that might fire me up to be like, all right, maybe I do need to push a little harder and try to add this into my routine. But yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some changes after the first competition when everyone kind of sees what everyone else is doing. And it's a little scary just not knowing, but really all I can do is just focus on my own progression and just trying to get stuff done.
Do you watch tape? Is it kind of like other sports where like in football, you have a quarterback that's reviewing tape to see how the team responds defensively? Are you watching tape of other competitions to kind of see what's out there? Or are you learning about judges? Like how do you, because you mentioned there's a difference in kind of competition versus just riding. What are you looking at to get better?
I mean, I don't watch it that often, like not really to analyze it or anything. I definitely have watched live streams back, like of contests I've been involved with, just to see, because when you're there, it's like you're focusing on yourself. Like sometimes I have no idea what the other girls even did. So sometimes it is helpful to like rewatch those competitions and, you know, look at the girls that got first, second, and third and see like, all right, what did they do? What made them so high above everybody else? So that's kind of helpful, but I'm working with my coach now, which is kind of new since last year. And it's just because it is a freestyle sport, like everyone has their own style. There's not like, oh, this trick is this many points or this trick is that many points. So it's really just up to you to develop your own style and like what tricks you like to do. And then, you know, put it all together to make it impressive to the judges.
You mentioned a couple of things. I want to go back really quick though, before we move on. You were saying that, you know, different people are working out in the same facility you are, right? You've got the British cycling team and some different things. Is it competitive? Is it competitive in the sense that like you are trying to beat someone else, or are you more trying to beat yourself in a way, like your last run?
It's both, because like, I don't know for all riders, but for me, I'm definitely always trying to beat myself, because there's always stuff that I know I can do that I hold back from because I get scared. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like number one on my list. But then at the same time, yeah, when we're all riding together, it's like everyone's like really supportive. Like, you know, I'm riding with this girl from England this week, and like we're competitors, and she's really good. And there's like a mix of like, all right, she's doing these tricks, I need to step up my game. But then also like we're helping each other with tricks. Like we're pushing each other. We're encouraging each other to do tricks that we might notice. Like if she noticed I was scared to do something, and, you know, she was encouraging me and trying to help me do it. Because at the end of the day, like it's still really cool to see someone land something that they're working really hard for, even if it's not yourself, because we all know that feeling.
Got it. So it's collaborative as well as competitive. Like you're there, you're going to try to beat each other in competition. But at the same point, if you're working together or you're out riding a course together, you're going to be also like, hey, this is how I did this. You mentioned tricks. What kind of tricks are we talking about here?
Well, I can tell you right now, there's like 3 tricks that have been my scariest tricks. That basically what I've been working on this past few weeks is taking those tricks from like my scary list of I only do it when I'm like super pumped up and just really feeling it, and bringing them over to this list of I'm doing it every day, so that it becomes like something I don't even think about doing. And the only way to do that is literally to just get myself to do it every day in any situation, no matter if I feel great or if I feel terrible. So one is a backflip on a spine, which is basically like a normal jump, but instead of being like having a good distance, it's like this. It's like steep on both sides. Damn,
that sounds so sketchy. I am like, I love business. Business risk is fine, but that sounds like a whole different. So, okay. All right. Backflip on a spine. Okay.
It's interesting, but yeah, that and like a truck driver, which is you do a 360 and you spin the handlebars around at the same time. And then a flip turn down, which is just a variation of a backflip. And then you do a turn down, which is kind of hard to explain, but it's basically 2 tricks in one. So yeah, there's a lot of spins, a lot of flips. And
you're talking about spins, you're talking about flips. I remember just personally being so pumped the first time that I saw you do a backflip, and like that just blew my mind, right? And I feel like a lot of people, when they see someone doing a big trick like that they're like, oh my gosh, how did she just do that? Like she did a backflip on a bicycle. You know, they would say you're super brave, or like, oh my gosh, she's such a daredevil, right? Those things might be said. Do you feel like a daredevil?
Absolutely not. I'm like the opposite of a daredevil. And I get that all the time. And it's like, I'm not a daredevil, because if you ask me to do anything else, bungee jump, go on a roller coaster, ride on the back of someone's motorcycle, literally like any of those like daredevil things, I'll be like, no way. Like, absolutely not. And so, I mean, I don't know why I do this. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just sitting there like, why am I putting myself through this? But it's like just specifically BMX. But even with that, I'm very calculated, like too much. I wish I was a little bit less, because I hold myself back a lot, but everything to me is like very calculated and controlled. And, we have like foam pits and stuff that we practice things into. So I don't know. I don't feel like an adrenaline junkie. I'm not that type of person that just wants to go out there and do crazy things. I just somehow fell in love with these bikes, and it was enough to like make me push myself to those like scary moments.
Are you scared of falling off or getting injured?
Oh yeah, every day.
Is that a fear that is kind of like that other people feel too? Is that specific to you, or, do the other riders, are they trying to, like, is that kind of like, you don't want to get injured because, obviously you could die. Like, that's a crazy, crazy trick. That's not like a chill trick,
I think everybody has that. It's just some people are daredevils. Some people in the sport are those type of people, and other people are more calm and what's the word I used earlier? Calculated.
Mm-hmm.
So it just like, there's literally like so many different types of people in the sport. It's very interesting. And yeah, I don't know.
You mentioned a couple times now. You said you've been your own worst enemy before. You said there's so many different types of people in the sport, and I feel like I'm hearing something again and again, which is like the person's mentality really, really matters.
Yeah.
And I know you're involved with something called Mind Tricks, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So basically, Mind Tricks, for now, it's just an Instagram page. We just came out with like a t-shirt and stuff, but I had previously shared stories on my Instagram about struggles with mental health and like panic attacks and depression and stuff, and just my own stories. And I was talking with a friend one day, and he kind of said, why don't we make a page where other people can share their stories as well? So we created it. Basically, I try to make it like action sports focused, just because that's like the community I'm in. And I didn't really know of any other like page like this in the sport, just to like encourage athletes to talk about it, to talk about mental health, to make it more normal to talk about, and just share the stories from, so that like, I mean, we share stories from all types of people, amateurs, pros, like whatever. But I think a lot of the stories are from professional athletes. And I think it's good, because then just, your average kid that just maybe rides on the weekends or whatever can see that even these people that they look at as like heroes, that look like they have everything together, that have perfect life, that they still deal with stuff like this, and like no one's immune to it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think especially because of the industry you're in, it's powerful, because like I said, like I look at you and I'm like, aside from being, my cousin, and, I love you so much, your family, but also I see you like on the bike and you're doing crazy stunts. And I've even, I've been with you when you're riding with other people as well. And there are people that are doing these monster tricks. And so I guess the natural assumption is like, they're fearless, they're daredevils. They, are kind of this superhuman level that I could never even imagine myself going to, but you're giving an outlet for people to share their real stories. And I think that's really, really powerful. Do you, just a side question, do you feel like a lot of the athletes that you ride with in this kind of extreme sports category, are they super outgoing, crazy, daredevil types, like the majority? I know you said it takes all types, but are the majority like that? Are they typically like introverted, reserved?
I mean, I think it's like 50-50. I wouldn't say it's more one way than the other, really, because like you have your people that are super outgoing, and then you have your people that are just kind of doing their own thing and they don't talk much. And like, I really don't feel like there's a type. There's not a specific type in BMX. of like what your general rider looks like.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the mental health thing, because I feel like that's huge for so many people. Like it kind of freezes you a lot of times, and I know at different points in business, I've struggled with that. And on this channel, of course, we're talking about reaching your potential, like accomplishing a lot and kind of pushing yourself towards that. But mental health and anxiety and having some of those things that are going on in your head often directly affect your actions, right?
Yep.
Talk to me a little bit about how you overcame or how you deal with that stuff. Like maybe you're having a panic attack or you're feeling super anxious about something, but you're a Red Bull sponsored athlete who's going to the Olympics, like, and you've got to go do something. Like, how do you get yourself out of that funk?
I mean, in the moment, like I have in the moment techniques, obviously, to like calm myself down and stuff that I've learned from working with like a sports psychologist and just like a life psychologist. But I mean, the one thing that really made me stick with BMX was because it was always my outlet for like overcoming my fears, overcoming this anxiety. Like I discovered it when I was at a point in my life, like 14 years old, where I wouldn't even leave my house. And then I got this bike and I started riding it in the front yard. And then that got kind of boring to me and I wanted to go to the skate park, but that was like a big deal. I wouldn't leave the house. I wouldn't even go to the grocery store with my mom. So I took my bike and my mom brought me to the skate park, and, it was a big deal back then, but I really, really wanted to go ride my bike. And so that literally became my whole life. Like next was going on a plane to go to a competition. And then once I kind of got into this like competing circuit, like I almost had no choice. And I found myself on a plane every few weeks. And so I think just finding that thing that drives you, so that whatever fears you have, like if you don't have anything driving you, then you're going to get scared and there's going to be no reason to get over that fear. You're just going to be like, well, I'll just stay here. Why? There's no reason to go do it. But if you can find that passion, whatever, then you have a reason for putting yourself through that fear, because at the end, like it'll be good. There's a reward there at the end. And that literally, that's what I've been doing even to this day. And it's like, yeah, now there's like more pressure because I am a sponsored athlete and stuff. And sometimes I'll go through these periods where it's like, all of a sudden I'm having panic attacks again for no apparent reason, but, oh, I'm on Redbull now. I'm on Mongoose and I have to go to this competition. Like, what am I going to do? And so it's just been an ongoing kind of battle of finding what works for me, because it's kind of different for everybody. That makes it hard, but just figuring out what works for me and getting into good routines so I can just keep going like day by day. And yeah.
So it sounds like it's different for every person. So if someone listening to this right now, maybe they're not necessarily in BMX, but they're doing skateboarding or they're whatever, business, anything that's hard, anything that's challenging, you have to have that connection point. The reward has to be something that grabs you enough that you're willing to put yourself through it. Because like you were just saying, you're like, I don't know why I put my, body through this, even like falling off the bike and like all that. And your desire for wanting to be good and kind of get to the next place has to outweigh that fear. Do you have people in your life who you feel like, push you and kind of help you? Because you mentioned having a sports psychologist, you said. So who are some of those people that kind of help you continue to push yourself and continue to go along, maybe when you don't know how to handle some things?
Yeah. I mean, it's a combination. Obviously, like my mom is like the biggest one, just always being there, and I can call her whenever anything's happening. But it's definitely a team effort. Like I have so many family members that are just always there to talk and support me and stuff. And then also, I have my sports psychologist, Jason. I have my coach, like my riding coach, but he also, in order to be my coach, he has to understand me. And so I can really go to him with anything because he gets it. He understands how I work. And he can talk me off the ledge. So it's definitely like a collaborative effort. And it's important, I think, to like create, like surround yourself with this team that can step in and like help you out when you get to that point where you don't see like a way out.
Mm-hmm. You said talks you off the edge. I feel like horrible dad joke coming. He talks you over the edge, right? So you could terrible joke. No one hate me. And if you hate me, say, put it in the comments. But so how would you go about finding these people? You know, you said you have family members, obviously, but let's say someone's struggling with this right now. They're just watching this from their room on YouTube because they are struggling with anxiety or getting over that hump, and they really like X, whatever it is. What would your advice be to them? Like, what's the first step to just like go to the skate park, right? What is that?
I would say just like find a friend, even just one person that will do it with you. Because for me, a lot of the times I just need someone there with me. And whether it's just to talk to that person, if you're feeling unsure about something, sometimes just talking through with them makes it easier. Sometimes you need them to be physically there with you. But like, obviously, I'm really fortunate to have this whole team around me, but not everyone can have that. And I think if you can just find one person that you can trust, that you feel like you can tell anything, like that really helps a lot.
Starting with one person and then kind of like use them as a buffer for some of these things. And then you can start growing. I love that. That's really, really good advice. And especially now as everyone is, has gone through this whole time of being on quarantine and so much has changed, even riding schedules. And like with a lot of sports have, ceased in how they're typically played out. And obviously we're seeing some things open back up here, but going through those changes definitely has a toll on people mentally. When people are interacting with the Mind Trick, so you said right now it's just a page on Instagram?
Yeah.
So it's a platform then where people can go, do you like take submissions or what's the format of it?
Yeah, we basically just take submissions. We had like a form, a Google form set up, and it kind of died down, but I mostly just reach out to people now. Like athletes that I've seen post things or that I'm just friends with. And then I think people that maybe I don't know, they read that and they just send us like a message and stuff and kind of just go from there. I kind of leave it open, just however they feel they want to share. Mm-hmm. There's no set format. But yeah, I created it and I try to keep it up as much as possible. We created these shirts and that was kind of like the first step of like an apparel line or an apparel side to it, but it's definitely just open to morph into whatever we decide to morph it into.
Yeah. Well, it's a really huge need. I think a lot of people, I even know in my own experience dealing with business, like your mind definitely does play tricks on you. Mm-hmm. And limiting beliefs and kind of like this negative mental self-talk. You said you're your own worst enemy. I can totally echo that, and I feel like whether it's reaching out to a big client or getting up after a business fall, right? There's so many different comparisons to that. So I'm really excited to kind of continue to see that grow. And I'm really hopeful that everyone who listens to this can go check that out as well and kind of see that. Because I think the other part of this is there's a lot of folks who don't necessarily struggle with mental health or don't realize that they're struggling with it, maybe in that moment or that season in life. Do you have any advice for someone who maybe is friends with someone who's struggling or who doesn't necessarily actually know the feeling of what it's like to deal with some of these mental health issues, but they know that someone else is? Like, what can they do to help?
I mean, I think I try to like share resources. Sometimes I see like little memes or whatever pop up and there's like good lists of like what they can do. But I think at like bottom line is just to be there for them. I was kind of going through some stuff around Thanksgiving and I didn't want to leave the house anymore. And my friend Corey Coffey flew out and she just came and hung out, and she has her routine of going to the gym, and she would just, something as simple as every day she'd be like, hey, let's go to the gym. And the first couple of days I was like, no, I'm not going. And she just kept asking and kept asking. And it's like, no matter how many times I said no, she still extended the invite because eventually I was going to say yes. So just being there for them. Sometimes that just means sitting with them in the house. Sometimes, it just means encouraging them to come out and just continuing to do that because eventually they will say yes. And just listening to whatever they need to just get out.
So what would be the worst thing that someone could do?
The worst thing would probably just to try and tell them to like get over it, or that like it'll be fine, don't worry about it, kind of just dismiss it. Rather than help them embrace it and just get through it, rather than try to brush it away. Which
could kind of be an easy thing to do because it's like, I don't know what it's like. I don't know what they're going through. And so instead of validating it and saying, hey, look, I understand, I don't know how you're feeling, but I understand that you're feeling this sort of way. I'm here for you. Talk to me. Instead of, you're just crazy like that.
Yeah.
It sounds like, okay, interesting. I want to go back really quick and talk a little bit about the Redbull sponsorship, the Mongoose sponsorship. As you mentioned you wrote some cringy emails as maybe a 14, 15-year-old that, your current self would be embarrassed of. How would someone go about becoming a sponsored athlete? That's kind of a big move for a lot of people. Are you receiving money at first? Are you receiving free gear? How does that look? What was your process that you went through?
Well, yeah, for many years, it was just kind of getting free product.
How did that start?
A lot of that, I think, because it was before I was really out on the competition scene, was just through social media, just reaching out to brands through social media. But I feel like the best way, like now, knowing what I know now, if I had to do it over, is really just to like network with people, preferably in person, but like just go to events, go to local jams, go to local skate parks, and then you'll meet people who know other people and just kind of build relationships from there.
And when you say build relationships, do you mind being specific? Like, are you just like, hey, what's up? Cool hat, or are you saying, hey, like, I'm a rider. I'd love for you to check out my page, or like, what does that practically look like?
I mean, I guess it's less of just like being like, hey, can you sponsor me? Like, be my sponsor. And more of just, I don't know, like getting to know them, like becoming friends with people, not like, oh, I'm just going to become friends with them to get sponsored, but like let people see your riding, and then, just start talking about riding and about your goals and stuff. And then kind of let it happen naturally from there. I mean, it's definitely interesting in these times now with like social media and stuff, because a lot of it is just reaching out to companies. But I feel like at the very beginning, when I used to just like hit people up trying to be sponsored, like I should not have been sponsored at the time, or like I wasn't ready to be sponsored. And like, I don't know, with Mongoose, I literally I was at an event. I was at like a competition / trade show and just started chatting with one of the guys at, their tent. They were selling bikes at their tent. And then we just got to chatting. And then a couple of weeks later, he emailed me and we talked some more. And then eventually they're like, hey, would you want to ride for us? So it kind of just happened like that.
How do you prepare for being ready to be sponsored? Is that just practice, like straight practice and putting it out, like being visible? So putting it out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, wherever?
Yeah, I would say just doing that because it's easy to do that now. Like it's every, like I said, it's right at your fingertips. I don't know if you can be ready. Like I said, I wasn't ready to be sponsored, but then now that I think of it, like maybe if I didn't have all those smaller sponsorships, I wouldn't understand come time to have these bigger sponsorships. I wouldn't really understand what's good, what's not good and stuff like that. So maybe, I did have to go through that in order to know, because I don't know if you, without going through it yourself, if you really could understand. It might be one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's just important to like let your riding speak and let your personality and like how you are speak for yourself. So you don't come off as like just this random kid that wants free stuff, basically.
Yeah. You're willing to provide like the value and you understand it.
Yeah.
Would you say reaching out to athletes that are in their field? So whether this is BMX or, whatever, reaching out to other athletes and saying, hey, how did you do it? Like mentor me. Would that be a good strategy?
Yeah, you can do that. And I've talked to a lot of athletes, even recently, that have been in the game much longer and gotten different advice from them. And I've had people that I don't know reach out to me on Instagram like, hey, how did you get sponsored? So, I don't feel like I'm an expert whatsoever on this topic, but I can at least, kind of give them an overview of what I did and what I think maybe I shouldn't have done.
Experience is totally the best.
Advice.
Yeah. Experience is totally the best teacher. Like you go through it, once, twice. You've had a number of different sponsors now, both receiving product and, actually money and different things. So that's really cool. Well, Nikita, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show. If people want to connect with you personally or connect with Mind Tricks, that's something that they really connected with. Where can they find you? Where can they find Mind Tricks online?
I have Facebook and Instagram for both of those. I definitely am more responsive on Instagram. My handle is Nikita.Ducarroz. So first name dot last name. And then Mind Tricks is it's spelled exactly normal, except the first I in mind is a 1.
Very cool.
And yeah, I try my best to just respond as much as possible and just, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know I so admire what you do, and I think it's so cool. I'm so proud of you. My kids really look up to you, and to see you progress as far as you did and have, and to see you kind of accomplishing stuff, even though you've struggled with some things, I think is really the ultimate definition of strength. Like people aren't just magically strong. They go through things that hurt them, that are tough, and then they get over it and they do that again and again and again. And that makes a really successful person. So I'm really proud of you, and I'm excited to see you in the Olympics. I'm excited to see you continue progressing with the Swiss team. We might have to have you on a different time to talk about how you landed on the Swiss team and not the US team, because I know you have dual citizenship. So we'll maybe have to plug that and talk about that in a later episode. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course.